All right, so I was going to tell a story about me. Uh, it goes back. I've had about 6 careers. That's why you have no idea what you're going to be doing in 20 years, and you should. Um, but um, I I went to law school, and after law school, uh, because that was going so well, actually did fine. But my wife and I started a business, so. Uh, Ryan can relate to that, or is it Brennan? Who's going to start move in with mom and dad? Yeah, it was you. Okay. Anyway, um, so let me fast track this. I have been in my life um, a university professor at Eastern. I've been a prosecuting attorney. I've been a high school.
The prosecuting attorney for Ann Arbor, right?
Well, I was the assistant. I
Okay.
wasn't the elected prosecutor, but
Okay.
I spent a lot of time in the courtroom. Um, and owned a fine art photography gallery in Ann Arbor for a number of years, had an advertising agency for a number of years. And then 25 years ago, you're probably guessing that I've been around a while, um, I was invited to join a consulting firm called Dannemiller, Tyson Associates. That was Kathleen Dannemiller and Chuck Tyson. And if you know anything about the world of organizational development, and I don't know if you do, Kathy Dannemiller was kind of a legendary person in the development of a field that is now thoroughly professionalized, but which was just emerging in the 1980s as a field. And so I've spent the last 25 years doing organizational development work, helping companies and organizations of all sizes and shapes um, figure out what they wanted their future to look like, how to get everybody involved in creating a future, and understanding human interaction. And what I'm proposing to do today is to tell you a little bit about this methodology that I've helped to develop over the last 25 years. And then I'm going to tell you a story, kind of bring to life the work that I do. So let me, are you going to start recording now, or what do you
Oh,
want?
yeah. Yep, I did.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to put on a slideshow here. This methodology is called whole scale change. The name was actually, we kind of created it when we were writing a book here some years ago. We needed a name for a methodology that had emerged over about 15 years. And the idea of whole scale change is that we think about the whole system no matter what scale we're working at. It doesn't matter whether it's a team or a department or a division or a whole enterprise. We're thinking system all the time. So whole scale change is an approach to organizational change that is a combination of theories, models, tools, processes that all kind of fit together. It's a matched set that support engaging whole systems to bring about positive change. Whole scale change is like a third generation evolution of very early thinking that began, some of it began in the 40s and 50s, but really took root in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And today, these are all influences or things from which we have borrowed ideas, or in some cases, these are things that have grown up kind of side by side. So um, you probably, you know who Deming is? D. Edwards Deming, the quality movement. Might know something about chaos theory. You probably know who Peter Drucker is. So, because strategic planning is really kind of Drucker's
Mhm.
one of his major contributions. So the idea is we're kind of an open system. We borrow from people, we incorporate, we're constantly evolving and changing.
Some of them have watched my humble leadership webinar with Ed Shine.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
So
So anytime you're looking at system change, but if you want to develop any kind of a system change methodology, there are 5 elements to it. One is you've got to figure out how to have a systemic view, and that means to not perfect a subsystem, but to make sure that all the pieces fit together. You have to be purpose driven, and the organization has to the change model has to be focused on what will be different because we have done this engagement. The idea of process change is a journey. It's not an event. You're never quite done. Theory, there have to be robust, predictable processes and values, what we stand for. So the work that I do falls into these categories. I end up doing a fair amount of strategic planning, both in the for-profit, the nonprofit, and the government sectors. Um, help organizations get ready to implement strategy, sometimes redesigning processes or the org chart, culture change, getting over a merger and acquisition situation, implementing technology, um, forming strategic alliances, and building leadership capacity. So I get to do a lot of cool, fun things. So we don't have time to go into all of this, but there are 7 models that kind of underlie whole-scale change. One of it is a model of how change happens. One is, what does a healthy system look like? One is, how do you go about engaging large groups through a converge-diverge model? One is the development of a change roadmap, which is to figure out the critical path to lead an organization through from where they are to where they want to be. And then the thing we're going to talk about today, strategic planning model. How does an organization do successful strategic planning that really makes a difference and gets everybody involved? There are a couple of other models. One is a team formation model, membership, control, and goals, and then the action learning model, which is kind of plan, do, check, act, which is kind of a universal one. So what I'm assuming today is that sooner or later, what every organization that you guys end up working for is going to want to do a strategic plan of some kind or other. Various levels of formality, but people are saying we got to have a plan. So the idea of strategic planning is to figure out what's the future you want, what's the preferred future, and how do you go about creating it. So creating a future of your own choosing. For a lot of folks, when you say strategic planning, they their eyes glaze over. It sounds like something that is abstract, not important, or complicated. It's none of those things. There are 5 key questions that drive strategy. Where are we? What's our situation? Who are we? What's our identity? What's our intention? Why are we here? Where do we want to be? What does the future need to look like? And how will we get there? What's the plan? What's the journey going to look like? And how are we going to make sure, because things are going to change, blow us off course, how are we going to stay on track? So I've got a more detailed version of this, but if you were going to look at a strategic plan and you were going to try to explain it to 50 or 500 people, most of whom are frontline folks, and the story I'm going to tell you today is about a hospital, and so hospitals are on our mind right now, so I think it's appropriate. But if you're trying to explain to 2,000 people what's our plan, there are three elements. One is the situation of the kind of the environmental scan. Who's counting on us? The environment, what's going on in our world. Then the top 3 bars there are kind of the long-term plan. Mission and values, strategic vision, strategic goals. I'm going to explain each of those in a minute. And then those are going to kind of be the long-term direction of the plan. And then what you see in the lighter blue bars are the things that are going to be part of each year's annual plan. So let's talk about kind of what are the questions, how do we go about creating a plan that incorporates these 3 elements. So the question of where are we asks, who's counting on us? So think about, in the case of a hospital, let's just take that for example, there's usually going to be a board of directors, there's an executive leadership, there's physicians, there's hospital staff, the nursing staff, tech staff, people that do facilities management. There's patients, there's insurers, there's the families of patients. Think about all the people who are counting on the hospital for something. And every one of those groups needs something different, has a different interest. And so we have to identify, make sure we understand who are the stakeholders that we think really matter, and our community matters too. So there's a whole raft of folks who care and who are counting on the organization for something. We need to make sure we understand who those people are. And then there's the environment, and mostly the environment is what are the things that are changing, the factors, the forces, trends, and developments that we need to pay attention to in order to do good planning. And so some of those are social and cultural trends, economics, politics, demographics, technology, all of those things we just have to be aware of. And now Professor Barker has been hammering into you got to understand who we are. Who are you? What's your mission? And in this case of an organization, it answers the question, what business are we in? And what that means is, where do we choose to compete? Because no matter whether I'm running a nonprofit or a for-profit organization or a governmental agency, I'm competing for people's time, attention, resources, sometimes their dollars, and I'm creating value for somebody. And so the question is, where do I choose to compete, and within what limitations? Do I have a service area or a particular field that I'm working on? Who do we serve, and how do we create value, and where do we choose to compete? So that mission statement sets the boundaries for organizational activity. Values describe who we are in a very deep sense, and values are the behaviors that we expect from each other. You can't be a good citizen of this organization unless you behave in a certain way. They define, taken together very often, they will define the culture. And I wanted to make it clear that just because the values are up on the wall when you walk in the building doesn't mean that's how you live. And so real values, the practiced values, can be very different from the espoused values, what we say we are, right? We're open, honest, caring, compassionate, and by the way, you just got laid off, right? So we're looking at trying to create a set of values where there's congruence between what we say we do and what we actually do.
And that's leadership's job, right? Is to make those values on the wall become reality every day.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
the reality is that the people, to some degree, the values will be the result of leadership. What part of the job for leadership is to create conditions where positive, healthy values are the ones that get practiced.
Mm-hmm.
So then the thing that we're talking about here is strategic vision, which is where do we hope to be in 3 to 5 years? And I want to distinguish between a vision like save the world, eliminate poverty, from a vision of what is our organization going to look like in 3 years or 5 years. It's that organizational vision that we're looking at. We may have a larger purpose that we share with lots of other organizations to do good in the world or whatever. But we're talking now about the vision of where do we need to be as a group of folks who create this organization. And is this vision something people find energizing, inspiring? Is it a stretch? Does it call us to greatness? And finally, at the high level, strategic goals are where we focus our energy. And when I said, a strategic goal right now for the United States, if we were looking out the next 3 to 5 years, is to expand the capacity of our healthcare system so that it can respond to any challenge. That's a goal you can imagine all the things that would have to happen to do that, right? But it's directional, not measurable. We are not yet to the place where we're going to have an X% increase of Y. We're just saying expand the capacity of our healthcare system to serve the needs of the people, regardless of the challenge. And the idea of a strategic goal is not just that this is management's list of goals. This is what everybody gets behind. So now, by the time now we're into that, if you can think back to the little chart there, this is the light blue, but first of the light blue bars. Strategic objectives are the milestones, the progress that we're going to make. It's the to-do list. They're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And that means that we can hold people accountable. It's somebody's job to get something done. Well, once we know what those objectives are, and then we have to figure out how are we going to get there? What are the action plans? What are the steps that we need to take? What are we going to budget for? What new initiatives are we going to undertake? By when? And how are we going to manage that? And then finally, the fact is things never go the way you plan. And so every once in a while, you have to bring people together. You have to monitor things in real time, but at some point you need to bring people together and say, did we do what we said we would do? If not, did we get the results we wanted? What have we learned? And what do we want to do differently? And so this plan, do, check, act cycle is part of is continuous learning. It's part of being a learning organization. So, and I'll make this slideshow available for your students so they don't have to write any of this down. But if you wanted to design an intervention to do strategic planning, basically this is the project plan. You're going to form a leadership group of some kind. It probably should not just be the leaders. It needs to be a representative of people who have some credibility and knowledge inside the organization.
All throughout the organization, right?
Yep, right. So, when the strategic planning committee is kind of the steering committee. They're the ones who have oversight of the process. Then you have to figure out how to get stakeholder data, and there's a lot of ways to do that. What you're going to see in a little while is a video that will show you how you do it with 350 people in the room. You have to create a draft mission, vision, values, and goals. So that work can be done by this smaller group or maybe a slightly larger group, but you're going to end up having to clear that with your board of directors. So you've got to have a checkpoint to make sure that the board's on board with that. Because ultimately they have to adopt the strategic plan in order for it to be official. But then you need to come back, and what you're going to see in the video will be coming back to share the draft with at least a critical mass of the organization and get feedback and make changes. And that's what you're going to see in the video. Then you have to finalize the objectives, move to action, start getting it done, move from planning to doing as quickly as possible.
And it doesn't mean anything unless you measure. You have to have results to measure, right?
Right. Well, that's the whole point, is that evaluation says, what is our scorecard going to look like?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of creating a plan on a page. That means to get your mission, vision, values, goals, and maybe even objectives, but mostly that on a single piece of paper, so that everybody can see at a very high level where we're headed as an organization. And people can ask themselves, how can I contribute? You need to have this written in a way that people say, I can make a difference, even if I'm on the janitorial staff. I can make a difference. And you'll see in this video some people from across the organization talking about it. It's at the point where that commitment to the plan on a page gets made. It's the people down on the front line may never read your multi-page, data-rich strategic plan, but they will read this because it'll be up on the wall. And it keeps everybody on the same page and avoids mission creep. Okay, so I could pause for a minute to see if there's anybody who has any questions, or we can dive into East Jefferson General Hospital.
I have a question.
Oh, good.
So Al, what got you excited about joining Dannemiller, Tyson and Associates?
Well, there was this woman named Kathleen Dannemiller who
Mm,
was, people said, a force of nature.
mhm,
I had known her for many years. When I was in the ad business, when I was um, doing other things, and um, we had at one point we had the second largest ad agency in Ann Arbor.
oh wow.
Well, Blixt Associates was a big deal. We represented St. Joe's Hospital. We
Mhm,
represented banks. We represented a lot of people. We did outdoor, uh, made TV commercials and all that. Well, our little ad agency went from being like 4 people to being 25 people in a year. And we were just exploding, adding offices and whatnot. We moved into this really nice office space, and guess what? Down the hall, there was this new consulting firm
mhm,
called Dannemiller Tyson Associates. And so I went down the hall and I said, Kathy, I think we need some help because this was my wife and I owned the business. We said, we don't have any experience as managers. We didn't get to go to Eastern Michigan University and study management. We need to do something. And
mhm,
so we ended up hiring Dannemiller Tyson. We did a 2-day offsite and got ourselves organized as a company. And so that experience happened probably 6 or 7 years before Kathy called me up one day and said, Al, I'm looking for partners, and I think you'd be good at this. Up to this time, um, like I told you, I've had a lot of careers, but none of them lasted more than about 5 years.
mm,
And I've been doing this for 25 years, so this must be the right one.
wow.
So the answer was that an opportunity to do something that I found intellectually exciting,
Mhm,
an opportunity to make a difference. I had a steep learning curve, but I had really good people I was working with. And, so it was an opportunity to do, I did planning for Chrysler. I did planning for the John F. Kennedy Presidential Museum and Library. I've done work for British Petroleum. I've done work for Ford. And I've worked for a ton of small local nonprofits. I've
mhm,
been in all the, I've been everywhere. I've done everything. And as somebody who is constantly looking to learn and grow, um, no two assignments are ever the same. So this was really cool. So are you ready
awesome.
for the
Yeah,
story?
does anybody have any other questions? Looks like we're good.
Cool. All right. So East Jefferson General Hospital. Now I got to tell you, the reason I'm telling you this story is primarily because there's a video that goes with it. It's almost impossible. Only 3 or 4 times in my 25 years have we had the client produced a video. Almost always the video is produced for internal consumption, and this one is too. It was really to bring all of the employees who were not at a large group meeting that you're going to see a chance for them to know what happened. So, but it's a classic case. It's 2005, um, but it was just before Hurricane Katrina decimated the city of New Orleans. Um,
Wow.
and what had happened here was East Jefferson was in one of the immediate suburbs of uh, of New Orleans, and this guy, Mark Peters, was the new CEO of East Jefferson, and we got a call, and here was his problem. He's the new CEO. There was a new chief financial officer, a new chief medical officer, and they had run into their first deficit in the previous year. The board had fired the previous president. They had taken the hospital into receivership. That's like bankruptcy, right? They had just recently emerged from that. They had 2,000 employees, but had just laid off 170 people. So you can imagine morale was not that great. People were not proud of this organization. There's 900 docs on the medical staff. And if you don't understand how healthcare works, there's an old saying, hospitals don't have patients, doctors have patients. So if a doctor doesn't admit, if a doctor has choices about where to admit a patient, the doctor is pretty much in control of where that patient goes. So there were 150 of those 900 who were key admitters. That means that they admitted more than one or two patients a year. If you didn't make those people happy, you're not going to have any patients. Unfortunately, the previous administration had done a great job of ignoring or alienating the medical staff, the doctors. And so there was a high level of lack of trust of the administration by the physicians. And we have a new team in place, and they're trying to figure out what to do. So the goal, as we were brought in, was to operate more like a business, which really doesn't. It isn't that they wanted to give up on patient care; they just wanted to not be broke.
Right.
They wanted to create a high involvement culture. They wanted managers who would take initiative, which they currently were not doing, and they wanted all employees to be committed to the strategic direction. So, thinking about the idea of a roadmap, there were three really big steps. There's a lot of little steps, but the three big steps was, first, we have to get what we think of as the leadership of this hospital on the same page. We have to get them aligned. Then we have to get the whole organization aligned on the strategy. And then we have to figure out how we're actually going to deliver it. So the first thing we did was we got together, I don't remember, it's probably 30 or 40, a combination of the highly placed doctors, which is totally unusual for this organization, and the senior management staff. We got them together for a retreat. Partly it was just to make peace between these two folks, but this was a 2-day meeting. And this was the purpose statement for this meeting. Working together in an open and interactive environment to craft an inspiring, clear direction of the future, a path to get there, and our role in leading. And you can read this some other time, but this is a very high-level 2-day agenda. And you'll notice that on the first day, a lot of that is the where are we now kind of stuff. What are the trends in healthcare? What does the local picture look like? Where's the medical staff fit? And then we kind of segued into beginning to look at vision of the future. We got a view from leaders, view from key stakeholders, which, by the way, the head of the medical staff was one of those. And they created a shared mission and vision that was kind of in draft form, and then everybody went away and came back the next day with a revised strategy, high-level strategy, mission, vision, values, goals, talking about values. And then you can see that we're switching over to action steps in what are the projects that are already happening, what are our objectives, what's the roadmap for the future. So we got these, I don't remember, probably 50 or 60 folks who were senior people, really influential people. We got them on the same page. Then there was convened a meeting of 350 people from across the organization, right down to the frontline staff, ambulance drivers, custodians, nurses, radiology techs, people that worked in nutrition services. And we got them together for 2 days. And that agenda, again, purpose was to develop with our team members and medical staff a new vision for the future growth and success of our hospital with commitment to quality in an environment of renewed trust and respect. And there's a lot packed into that. Mm-hmm. This meeting was designed by what we call an event planning team. Mm-hmm. So of the 350 people who were going to be in this meeting, we picked about 20 that were a kind of a representative slice. And we went off for 2 days and said, what's the meeting we need to have for these 350 people to have this kind of experience. And the agenda that you see on the screen now is what came out of that event planning team meeting. So once again, you can see day one is about where are we now? What does leadership, see in the future? And what does the draft strategy look like? The one that the prior group had put together was presented to the whole room, and there was an opportunity for them to give feedback. And then overnight, the leadership, including the medical leadership, made changes in the draft to reflect what the 350 people had said would be important. So at that point, the revised strategy was presented and approved. Essentially, they got a standing ovation for what they did. And now we moved towards where do we go from here? And so one of the things that was happening was that this was at the time when electronic medical records were just coming up. Cerner is a big electronic medical records company. They're still around. And so the rest of that meeting was involved in figuring out what are the action steps? What are the things we're going to do in the first 30, 60, 90 days to begin to live this strategy? So plan on a page. This is what it looked like. And I won't read everything. You can look at it. So what I want to do now, with your permission, is to show you the video that was produced for the East Jefferson staff. Let's see here if I can do this. Let's see what happens if I.
Good job.
All right, so let's.
We got Al. We got about 15 or 20 minutes left. Is that good?
This is an 8-minute video.
Yeah. Okay.
Here at the Pontchartrain Center, for 2 days in March, a diverse and dedicated group of over 350 employees and members of the medical staff gathered together for the purpose of developing a strategic plan for East Jefferson General Hospital's future in our community.
Our future is very dependent upon all of our team members. In the care that we provide for our patients, all of our team members play a role in that. With that in mind, they need to be part of us creating new solutions and as we try to continually improve what we do.
It began with thoughtful, focused discussions on our new mission statement. As illustrated here, there is a renewed commitment and dedication to the highest quality patient care with an inspired sense of community.
I believe that it's been a very open environment and very positive. Everyone's been very enthusiastic. And I think that in the end, I'm very optimistic about achieving the goals that we set, and I think East Jefferson can do it.
We need to take more initiative. If something is not done, don't depend on the next person to do it. If a job needs to be done, go ahead and do it.
Participants were clearly involved and excited about the opportunity for all employees to help shape a strategic plan for our hospital's role in community health care.
The enthusiasm, the involvement, and the participation of the team members in this conference was beyond my expectations.
Team members, you do have a voice. Voice it, use it, experience it to other people.
I think we're at a huge crossroads at East Jefferson. We're over 3 decades old and we've done business for a long time as usual, and it's a new day. The spirit of cooperation among the board members, the foundation board, and certainly the medical staff has given me a renewed sense, and I've been there 21 years, so I'm pretty excited about it. But I think all of us feel a sense of hope and certainly look forward to the future.
Right now we are in the good leadership hand. He has the dream, and I think the dream has already been caught through the dream catcher because he has great ideas, and if we all stay with him and stick with him and get behind him and have his back, we'll see a better year 2 years from now.
Throughout the 2-day event, there were many opportunities for team members and physicians to express ideas and develop strategies to make new ideas happen, like Post-it note sessions, which created excited, team-oriented approaches to problem solving. These post-it sessions are where ideas are distilled, discussed, and voted on by all participants, helping to shape our hospital's future.
These 2 days have been so exciting. It's been awesome to see the people get to know each other and to talk about important issues. And I'm very encouraged about the future of the hospital and its leadership based on these 2 days.
What I'm hoping gets back to the team members at East Jefferson is that although we're in the business of caring for patients, it is absolutely vital that everybody who works at EJ realizes that their input into that function, that mission that we have at the hospital is everybody's responsibility.
It's very important that we look proactively to the future. Our environment is changing significantly. We need to adapt quickly and move forward in a uniform way.
East Jefferson is today a better place already, with an involved and engaged employee dialogue. We are now part of the solution for creating a new, focused game plan, including many ideas, which will be incorporated into hospital goals for the future. It was a unified team, working to develop and plan our future.
So if it's one word to take away from this forum, it's communication. The most striking impression to me has been the camaraderie and the ability to see everybody here together working towards a common objective. And you don't see that much in many organizations today.
But what you get in an event like this is an opportunity for people to see and feel and touch the future together.
The best is yet to come, that the team members, that the administration wants to work very closely with medical staff in supporting their practices, that wants to invite them in to become part of the team, wants to work with them, get their ideas, their solutions. And I think it's going to be kind of a whole new world out there for the physicians, and especially those that want to participate and help with the planning and implementation of this.
The importance of community as expressed in the mission statement was clearly an inspiration for planning members and key to our future.
I think it's very important for each individual as a whole to take responsibility for where we stand, not just for their job within the hospital, but for taking a stand on being an EJ employee. What does EJ mean to our community, taking it back to our community, whether it's taking it to the Y where you go to the gym, or whether you take it to your daycare or your kid's school, making sure people know we're here and we're staying.
We need to have more community interaction. That's what's been taken away from this session.
Another important point of discussion was Cerner.
The implementation of Cerner is going to totally change how we take care of business at East Jefferson General Hospital. From a clinical perspective, what excites me the most is that we have very highly educated, highly paid individuals who really spend a great deal of their time doing mundane, repetitive tasks, where their time could be better spent taking care of patients. Cerner is going to bring to us the opportunity to automate those steps that we deal with day in, day out, that are essential to getting the work done, but really not something that humans have to do as much as machines can help us do that. And then we can get on to improving our systems and improving patient care.
It was a spirited 2 days of team member involvement that will create an action plan, successful through everyday communication with goals for the future. A plan which will be presented to all team members when the final plan is formulated in the near future.
This has been a great 2 days. A great first step in the process of moving East Jefferson forward. For the first time in many years, physicians feel that their voice is finally heard, and we look forward to working with administration team members in developing the future of East Jefferson General Hospital.
And we need to know that team talk is there. You do have a voice. If you use it, someone will get back to you and answer you. And that's important when you have leadership, to know that someone is actually listening to you.
I think that this is a milestone for East Jefferson General Hospital, and I think it is exactly in keeping with the new administration, the new approach that this organization wants to do for its team members, for the community, for the medical staff, and the most important thing is we all want to do it together.
Well, it's definitely a vision for the future. It's definitely a vision for all team members to solidify their place in East Jefferson for the future, and also East Jefferson is one of the leading healthcare providers.
I think much of the enthusiasm comes from just asking and allowing people to participate. I think that doesn't always happen, And I think it just points out that there are a lot of good ideas that come from many different places in the organization, and that's how we're going to operate as we move forward.
Your vision, your future. The East Jefferson General Hospital Strategic Planning Session for our future in our community.
Yay.
Okay. So, this is why I love my job.
Mhm.
I get to be with people who discover community, common purpose. They find meaning in what they do, builds teams. Organizations go about doing really good work.
Al, how many of those did you say you've done?
Oh,
Large group, whole scale change.
25 or 30. If I do more than 2 a year, it's maybe 30 or 40.
Okay.
You know, it varies. Sometimes it's 100 people or 80 people. The principle's
Right.
the same.
Right.
And so, you know, I've done 750 or 1,000 people a few times. As an organization, our firm has done 2,500. And, you know, so, but scale doesn't really matter.
Right.
Because when you're having a meeting like this, the real unit of conversation is the table. And getting those 8 people at that table to be as diverse as possible, reflecting who's in the room, means that 10 or 20 or 30 conversations can happen simultaneously. And then we just have to use our technology to roll up the results. We still use Post-it notes sometimes, but now there are electronic means for doing that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So there's resources if anybody is interested. And like I say, I'll send this over. This is me. I'm very willing to talk to anybody who's interested and wants to know more or has a question. And